Aloha and welcome back to Transfer Talk. As you know, my name is Travis and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Schwab. And this series is called Foot in the Door. It is all about your first semester at UH West Oahu.
Yes, Travis, this is going to be another great episode because we will be discussing how you can begin creating the foundation for a successful journey at UH West Oahu and beyond.
Absolutely. Key points of this series will be the importance of connecting with faculty and staff.
Yeah, I can't express enough of how important it is to find your people in this process. And when I say that, I'm really talking about your support system, be it faculty or staff who are involved in student services or other ways that they can support you in your academic journey, just by giving advice or becoming mentors. You will want to make these key connections because many of them will be with you all throughout your academic journey at UH West Oahu.
I 100% agree, Dr. Schwab. Also tied to this is taking ownership of the journey. Furthermore, we'd like to offer some practical advice and guidance on getting to campus in real life.
And as always, we will revisit what success looks like at this stage in your academic journey.
We have some amazing guests lined up as well, such as Dr. Kim Compoc from UH West Oahu's History Department, Dr. Yazmine Romero from UH West Oahu's English Department, and Alohi Perry.
So stay tuned for the first episode titled Connecting with Faculty and Advisors.
Aloha, we'll see you soon.
Aloha.
Aloha and welcome back to Transfer Talk. Today we have a very special guest zooming in from the island of Oahu, someone I'm very grateful and proud to call a mentor, Dr. Kim Compoc from UH West Oahu's History Department. Dr. Compoc is one of those legendary professors that are able to erase the social and physical distance inherent in remote learning. Her classes are truly high points of my academic journey, and I would recommend all distance education students at UH West Oahu to take at least one of her classes. Dr. Compoc, how are you? How is your summer going?
Oh, thank you so much, Travis. I'm having a great summer. Really glad to be here with you today on Transfer Talk. Yeah, just a big aloha to all of the KCC students. Really eager to find more ways to make our campus really welcoming to all of you. So yeah, glad to be invited to the podcast.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about you, Dr. Compoc. I've been working with Travis this entire summer, and he holds you in very high regard. It's great to have you here on Transfer Talk, and mahalo for taking the time to talk story with us. And to start things off, would you share with us a little bit about what it's like to be a history professor at UH West Oahu? And what type of experiences would you like students to have when declaring history as a concentration?
Thank you for the question. Just to be clear on some of the terms, like if you major in history at UH West, actually the way your degree, it's a humanities degree with a history concentration. And so I actually work, side by side with just a lot of other extraordinary people teaching English and philosophy and music and Hawaiian studies. And we all really committed to humanities education, and specifically with regard to history. How can I say? Well, I would like students to experience in declaring history as a concentration. The simplest way to answer that is I come from an ethnic studies training background. And so the motto of that movement, if people don't know, is really our history, our way. I know that for so many people, the history classroom is not an empowering place. The history classroom is a place that's empowering for elite people in the community, elite people in societies, history told by the winners and this kind of thing. And especially, given that we're a Hawaiian place of learning, the questions around Indigenous self-determination are all the more urgent for our students, So what does it mean to teach, especially American history, in a Hawaiian place of learning? I try as much to take all of that really seriously, take those challenges really seriously, and not skirt away from the difficult conversations. To me, that's part of what makes the study of history right now really exciting. Actually, the fact that the MAGA types on the right wing want to ban books and want to make, like in particular, African American history illegal in some places, or actually makes things a little bit more exciting. Even the 1619 curriculum, for example, was on the hot seat by Trump in the right wing, and I assigned that, and sometimes that makes students a little bit more, what's the controversy here? I want to know, like how people teach history is in the news every day. Is in the news every day, and whether you're a history major or not, if you're a college graduate, you should be able to engage with those debates and not be afraid, whether you identify as an American citizen or as a Hawaiian national or as someone uninterested in state identities. Like, come, let's read history together. Let's be excited about these debates. Let's dive deep together and have a meaningful conversation.
You make some really good points there. My undergraduate was poli-sci, and there's a huge historical component to that, and really teaching students the nuance of our geopolitical structures that we have on our planet, and looking at the tensions that exist between communities and critically thinking about those tensions. I think that really helps our students see the world more inclusively, and also being able to stand up for injustices that are out there. So I totally echo those sentiments. So the next question I had for you, Dr. Compoc, was, what are the aspects of the history concentration that you're most enthusiastic about? Where do you find that joy in the department right now?
I think that we just have really excellent faculty. I mean, I'm really proud to stand with my colleagues. Each one of us is really unique, but I think really committed. Kealani Cook, our history, our Hawaiian and Pacific work, and he is just a stellar scholar and teacher. Jason Chun does all of our Asian history classes, and he is actually an expert in like K-pop. So he uses like a lot of pop culture in the classroom, which makes him wildly popular. Also, Uluvehi Hopkins is my colleague, and she does work on both world history, but from a Hawaiian point of view, Pacific point of view. She also teaches our women in world history class, and she and I actually designed a class together called Finding Your Roots, from research questions to research answers. So helping students to think carefully about their own family histories and how those overlap with histories of the world, and giving students a chance to see their own ancestors in the archives, which is, to me, that's pretty cool. Matt Cavert also deserves a special shout out. He teaches our classes on the Cold War and also on a history of disease. Obviously, with COVID, we have to get better and how we think about disease in a global sense. And those lessons from history are so important. Shout out to Matt. Dr. Cavert is doing excellent work in the history concentration as well. I'm trying to also expand opportunities for students to do not just a senior thesis, but to also think carefully about the option to do a senior practicum, which is like an internship model instead of like just the straight thesis research paper. And it turns out that like the humanities division tends more toward research paper rather than practicum when you compare us to like the social sciences or business or whatever. And so I've just been kind of exploring places. Actually, I was just at Hawaiian Historical Society Friday before last, talking with them, Ulu Ulu Archives right on our own campus, just making sure that students know about the opportunities to, actually get out there in the community and build your resume. Actually, one of my students did her practicum at Hawaii Plantation Village. And then another student of mine was working with, actually, this is of interest to Kauai listeners. I had a student from Kauai, and he did his senior practicum on the Hanapepe massacre, and with a group of scholars who are putting together a collection of essays or compendium of essays for the 100-year anniversary of that in September. And so that was like super exciting. The Filipino guy too from Kauai. I mean, it was just, the way that aligned to really have a senior project that is, again, like relevant to who you are and the questions that you have about history, and be able to do stuff in the community that puts you in conversation with people, having, those same conversations. I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of that. And I'm hoping that trend continues. Whether you want to do straight research paper, that's cool. If you want to do a senior practicum in history, there's a lot of people doing work at the community level that would welcome senior history majors to help them with their work and expand their reach into the community.
I really do have to echo so much of what you're saying, Dr. Compoc. The history faculty, I'd even say the humanities faculty in general at UH West Oahu, are simply phenomenal. When it comes to the practicum, it's a great opportunity to gain some vocational skills, but also give back to the community. That's the dream, right? So while we are on the subject of senior projects, be it a research paper or a practicum, what would you say are some of the most memorable experiences that you've had with students who are really engaged with their work?
Oh, God. Well, to be frank, I'm still new faculty. I've been here now for 4 years at UH West. And so I've only supervised 4 seniors so far. Actually, 3 seniors and then you for the work you did. Actually, I'll give you a shout out, Travis. I hope it doesn't embarrass you, but we did a directed reading together on Agent Orange. And I don't know if he's told you, but he got both the Humanities Award and the Student Research Symposium Award. So, I mean, a feather in your cap is a feather in mine. I'm just really happy to have been part of that with you, Travis. It's such important research. And like you say, just like with the Hanapepe massacre, like there's people even on Kauai who are not aware of, the history of Agent Orange on the island and the U.S. military's complicity in that. So yeah, I think that was a really exciting journey for me to watch you get so excited about that topic. We also met with the library, UH West librarians, to talk about some of the documents that you found and making sure that those become available through our library, and not just for people who are students and faculty, but for the community at large. I love that we have that capability. And so again, as a professor, I'm a co-learner, like there's processes with our library that I learned through that directed reading I did with you, Travis, and also getting to watch you present at the student symposium. I love that, we were able to figure out the money for you to be, flown out here with some of the colleagues on Kauai, and then boom, you shut it out the park, and you're able to get the award. I mean, I think that is, again, I'm excited for you, but I'm just excited for all the students at KCC to see that example. And it shouldn't be a barrier that some people are distance. I would love to have the distance folks be able to fly over for the student symposium, regardless of whether they're presenting. Just be able to come and feel a part of the campus and get excited about each other's research projects. So yeah, I'll have to say, I don't want to embarrass you, but I have to say that was a really exciting thing for me. If students are interested, at the end of the semester, we have a senior colloquium. So all of the humanities students do usually about a 10-minute presentation. To me, it's such a feel-good event. You get to see all the history concentration folks, but everybody in humanities, and you just get to see all the incredible research our students are doing, and the practicum work they're doing in the community. And if students are still kind of wringing their hands, oh, is this the campus for me? That would be a great way to get your questions answered. I think you get a good sense of who the students are, get a good sense of who the faculty are, and get a sense of, if you want to go this route, basically how much aloha we have for our students, I think, and how passionate we are about history and about these questions facing all of us.
100%. I'd recommend all humanities students to check out the senior colloquiums because it's an opportunity to see the level of work that is being done, something to strive for, a benchmark. Plus, you get to support your peers, the seniors, and the faculty as well. Mahalo, Dr. Compoc, for the shout out. I couldn't have done it without you. For those who don't know, a directed reading is UH West Oahu's version or terminology for an independent study, which is actually kind of a good transition to my next question. The experience of a distance education student differs to some extent from your quote-unquote traditional in-person learner. So, what are some strategies you would recommend for our distance education students to maximize their connection to faculty?
Oh, great question. Thank you, Travis. I mean, it sounds so simple, but just show up for office hours. Don't be shy. I'm not exaggerating. 95% of the time I show up for my office hours and nobody's there. I mean, maybe this last semester was different because like you showed up quite a bit, and then my other senior practicum person would show up. Other than that, like it's so often that I don't have that surprise factor, and that's kind of what office hours are about. It's kind of like just feel like talking to your professor, whatever stage of your, of your research project is usually the reason I'm encouraging people to come, whether you're at the brainstorming stage, whether you're feeling really good about the project, whether you're feeling really bad about the project, whether you are excited about what you're learning, whether you're, feeling like you want to quit. Office hours are there for a reason. Kind of get to put my grading self to the side a little bit. And I tell students that I'm like, you need a pep talk, just come. It's fine. But I guess that's my main advice. Please don't be shy about, letting us know what's going on for you. And especially if you run into some snags. I know how it is with childcare and elder care, and people's jobs get in the way, and it can be a lot sometimes trying to manage everything. But if you're just holding on to everything and you don't tell your professors what you're going through, then there's no way for us to support you. I had a student who gave birth to twins this semester. And she had to schedule, like, it turned out there was some problems and she had to schedule a cesarean. I mean, whatever, even if it wasn't a cesarean, it's a big deal. And I didn't know about that until I want to say like 10 days before she gave birth or something crazy. Some of the things our students are going through just blow my mind. I was the one who had to tell her, you are entitled. That is a medical emergency, like you are entitled to an extension for your final project. Let's talk about it. What is reasonable given the, new responsibilities that you have? So yeah, I think that not being afraid to introduce yourself, come to office hours, stay in communication. I'll say this too for my fellow faculty. If a professor reaches out to you, you got to email back. You got to email back. Yeah, I think sometimes students, maybe they get shy or afraid. I'm not sure what goes on. But that does happen to us. We'll email students and they don't respond. And that sends a funny message that maybe you're only half-hearted about it and then when you drop, then there's no way for us to contact you again. But I'll just say that again, when students disappear on us, we notice. A lot of the faculty at UH West, like we really do care about our students. We really do want you to succeed. And so even if things aren't going great, if your grades aren't as, what you want them to be, often it's okay. Often it's that failure is actually part of the process. That I tell my students this a lot. Like I have more than a couple of colleagues who are tenure track faculty now, well into their careers, who are teaching classes that they failed as undergraduates. It takes more than one try sometimes. And you may not even realize how important those questions are to you in the long run. So please just don't give up on yourself. If the going gets rough, let us know and let's try and figure it out together.
It's so important to hear what you're saying, Dr. Compoc, for our students to reach out, to be proactive in their academic journey. And I've noticed that being a common theme that we've been hearing from a lot of the advisors, a lot of the professors. And the great idea for our students to gravitate towards is that you're stepping into your identity as a scholar. And we actually are very interested in what you have to say. We are co-learners. We are here to hear lived experiences and to be a part of that journey with you. It's really awesome for us to see our professors as advocates for us along that journey. So we did notice, Dr. Compoc, that you do list your course feedback on your faculty profile page. Not all professors do that. And what I really like about that is it shows a great layer of transparency for students who may be interested in taking your class. And so can you share a little about your educational philosophy and how important that student-faculty relationships are to you?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm applied for tenure in the fall. And so I just recently made that decision to have that link to all the student feedback. I appreciate that someone's noticed it already. Yeah, I figured, what, why not? There's a faculty actually in political science at UH Manoa, who I respect a great deal, who did that. And I was like, oh, this is so much richer and more complete than Rate My Professor. And I don't know if students are still using that, but this is all the data you could possibly want about me, warts and all. um, yeah, and full disclosure, like I understand, I think that there's been some thinking that like a writing intensive designation on as many classes as possible is a good thing. And I actually had a student say to me, I'm looking for classes that don't have writing intensive designation because I've got too many of those. And that was really instructive for me. Yeah, I definitely see myself as a co-learner. And I'm leaning in always to figure out what works with different students and where the demands are for new classes, and especially around pedagogy. In the last, I guess, year and a half, I've challenged myself to have more blended classes. If students don't know that lingo, it means like you've got simultaneous students in the classroom, what I call the room, and students online in the Zoom room. And trying to make it a dynamic experience where we're trying to make it as easy as possible for students to connect across distance. And it's tricky, it takes a lot of concentration on my part to make sure that students don't disappear in the online format. And I actually have it where, like, for example, if I'm giving a lecture with slides, that for students who are in the classroom, when they look up, they see a split screen, and half of it is my slides, and the other half are the students who are zooming in, from online. And in that way, that we can hopefully like recreate that feeling of like, oh, I'm reacting to the information, you're reacting to the information, let's talk in small group. And we also have the students presenting in a lot of my classes, and so they learn to do that as well. I tried to interact as facilitators of small groups and interact in that blended format where there's people online you got to think about and there's people in the room that you got to think about. I think that that's kind of the direction that 21st century learners are going to have to go in, because there's no way around the fact that we're probably going to have another COVID epidemic, right? Or another massive pandemic. So having the online is not going to go away. It's urgent that we have that option. If somebody gets sick, we have to have the online version. And then also on the other side, I think some students are very clear with me that Zoom does not work for them. And they want to be able to be with a professor, to talk after class and have all those kind of old-fashioned, I look you in the eye, I see you, I can touch you, like you're a real human being. It's not a podcast. When we're in the classroom together, like this is we're in dialogue, we're able to have, frankly, to give them what they're paying for. Tuition is really expensive. And so I'm happy to try to accommodate students for, whether they're in the Zoom room or the room, because I'm aware that it's not just students who have sacrificed, but oftentimes whole families have sacrificed to be able to come up with the tuition money.
I want to emphasize to our listeners out there that we have this distance education classroom here at KCC. It is state of the art. It is set up for Zoom. It's set up so that we can see our professors speak to us. It's set up so that we can engage and feel like we're in the room. And to hear that you facilitate your class in that format, Dr. Compoc, is really refreshing. And I know that our students here that are looking to be those distance ed students, they're looking for that connection. I was picturing it as you were explaining it. And so all of the listeners out there, just take time to come up to the library, check out the facility, speak with Shannon, see what the opportunities are here. And you're going to find that your transfer to UH West Oahu is going to really present you with that quality educational experience that you're looking for.
Yeah, I'd like to add that dialogue, that connection is possible to have over Zoom. It takes effort, but it is possible. And I think you managed that extremely well in your classes, Dr. Compoc. And I think part of that is tied into my next question, actually. In all of your syllabuses, you devote a portion of the final grades to class discussion rather than individual participation alone. Can you tell us about the, quote, strive to have the conversation of our dreams?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you actually read the syllabus. You're amazing, Travis. Yeah, so in case people have not taken my classes, I find it's really confusing as a professor. Well, grading in general is difficult. Grading people's participation is really difficult. And Students have such different personalities, different cultures, different levels of comfort with speaking. And the truth is, like, I only see what happens in a large group discussion. And sometimes I have like small group every single class. And that can be as instrumental in how a student, is it a good class or not? A lot can depend on that small group experience that I don't see, right? Especially in the Zoom environment, you just go into breakouts, right? And so I don't really hear what goes on. 10% of student grades, and this is not just oral communication classes, this is pretty much in all my classes, 10% of the grades I do not decide. So 5% of the grade you self-evaluate as a student. Did you step up? You know what I mean? Did you not play video games during class, but like actually concentrate? Did you engage with your fellow students, et cetera, et cetera? And then the other 5% is you get to grade your peers, as a collective. How close did you get to this? What I say on the syllabus, to actually have the conversation of our dreams. And by that, what do I mean by that? When everybody does the reading, no. And when everybody's prepared and excited, whether the reading made you really happy or really sad or really angry, whatever it is, whatever connections that you've been able to make, made you want to throw the book against the wall, like, let's talk about it. Let's have one of those conversations where you're angry that we have to say goodbye, like this is what college is all about. I thought that I thought one thing, and then somebody really challenged me, and now I'm like thinking something else. And to me, that's what makes education so worthwhile. It's not just a bunch of facts and dates or whatever. It's that when it shakes you to your core and you realize that you want to think differently, you want to feel differently, you want to act differently because your education made an impact on you. And I'll say one of the happiest compliments, one of the compliments I'm happiest to get actually is when students tell me, they shared the information with their families. Or sometimes I've had like, parents come in on the Zoom with them, because they're all, they're eavesdropping on the conversation. And that's always exciting for me too, because as we know, not everybody has access to education. Sometimes like we're talking about students who are first generation. And so when they get to share with their families, their parents or their grandparents, their aunties, the lessons from class, or literally sharing the readings with their families. I mean, I just find that, really, really extraordinary.
So speaking of those classes, how about give us a little sneak peek into one of the courses that you're really enjoying right now?
Oh, well, part of why I was hired was to teach our History of U.S. Empire class. And so I'm teaching that in the fall, always excited about that. It's a writing intensive class. It also has an ethics designation. It's a hard class, but I've had, I think, some of the most powerful revelations in that class too. I've taken that class and have just paid me some of the compliments I hold dearest because I think, let me just give a shout out to some of the veterans out there, or even active duty military. I know that it's so tough for them a lot of times because, they're going to places around the world that the American education system gave them zero preparation for understanding their history, their culture, their language, their religion, anything, and once you're a soldier, you have to obey orders. You cannot, people are not interested in your analysis of foreign policy. People are not interested in your analysis of history. Maybe your fellow soldiers are, but the higher ups, not necessarily. And then we turn all of that upside down in the history classroom. Of course, I want you to read these books. Of course, I want to hear what you have to say. Of course, let's talk about it together. So the U.S. Empire class can be tough for everybody. Most of our students are people of color. That means most of them, their ancestors have either been enslaved or colonized or both. And very, very, very few of us are given the resources within our families or within the public school system to understand what that means and the ongoing legacy of slavery and colonization and just capitalism, just trying to survive. So many of our people unhoused, so many of our people struggling for food, so many people struggling for a decent life with decent job, decent housing, decent wages, decent health care. Understanding the larger historical context of how we got to where we are today and how our family genealogy intersects with that. I don't know, to me, it's really exciting. I just want to say too, I'm teaching a class that's early American history. That's the 200 level. That's not writing intensive. So that's a little bit more traditional quizzes and tests, and you don't have to write any essays. You don't have to do any. You don't have to do any like hardcore research. And so, if folks are interested, it's a similar set of questions, but just pre-Civil War. And so, yeah, if people are interested, I think that there's so much that gets tossed around in contemporary society about the founding fathers this and the founding fathers that and doesn't even matter. And a lot of that early American history stuff is really important. For the fall, I teach a third class, history of LGBTQIA pop culture, which is a class I teach every semester. It's actually a required class for the Academy for Creative Media. History of pop culture. I just teach the LGBTQ version of that. And anyway, they have a lot of students over there. That one's already booked, but I really enjoy that class as well. I think it's the only class with an LGBTQIA focus on the campus. I could be wrong. Still learning about my campus, to be frank. But I've had some amazing connections with students in that class. I just wanted to say to cisgender heterosexual students are more than welcome to take that class. It's not just for folks in the community. Heteropatriarchy is affecting all of us. Gender roles and sexual issues of sexuality are like literally in the news every day. So developing students' ability to talk about those issues, and increase their comfort level with the vocabulary, and it's just a great fun watching movies and talking about cartoons and talking about the history of representation and what folks in the community are doing to make change. Yeah, and as far as the other classes I teach, Asian American history, African American history, Filipinx American history. If students are curious, I'm always happy to send my syllabi, or you can check out my faculty page. As Travis mentioned, I have all my student evaluations there and kind of give you a sense of, how I approach things and what students have to say about it.
So speaking of Filipinx American history, I know you've done some work with the Filipino Curriculum Project. Can you tell the listeners a bit about FCP?
Yes. Oh, I was so excited about this. Yeah. With all the stuff going on with Palestine, I'm more attentive than ever about student organizing. These encampments have been like a major event, but people may not know about the fact that we have student organizing right here in Hawaii, and a group of high schoolers, not college students, high schoolers from both public and private schools came together basically because no matter where you're at, Hawaii educators have done a very poor job including Filipinos in the curriculum. Very poor job. And so they went to the legislature to demand a change with Department of Education. And so long story short, I've been in this 9-month long process of preparing a professional development curriculum for Department of Education teachers to have more tools in their toolbox, basically, whether they want to do a section on Filipino history, or they want to, and Filipino diasporic or Filipino American history, or whether they want to do an entire course on it. And so there's a class at Waipahu and I want to say Farrington this fall that's debuting. And we had the professional development in June. I did the section on the sacadas, which people don't know, it means like the contract workers that were that came over in 1906 to basically 1946, or kind of the period known as the sacadas period. So I did the section to prepare our teachers to do better with teaching about that topic. But it was incredible. Yeah, I got to be like, it's kind of a who's who of Filipino historians in Hawaii. And, not just historians, actually, language professors and literature professors and just people who are really focused on like basically history and social studies. And it was just great to connect with so many Department of Ed teachers. And I know that you want to be one too, Travis. So yeah, it was going back to your work. It was great to just imagine what we were able to create for the, Filipino, Filipina, Filipinx community in Hawaii, but then maybe this opens a door for Micronesian community, African American community, and Black community, Vietnamese community. And there's so many different folks who are, I imagine, are also pretty underrepresented in DOE's curriculum. And so anyway, I'm hoping this is the gateway curriculum just opening things up for much more inclusive, much more exciting curriculum in DOE.
That's incredible. You know, you've been an amazing mentor for me throughout my time at UH West Oahu. So, would you like to give a shout out to any of your mentors?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, I have to say my co-chairs on my dissertation, Candice Fujikane and Bernadette Gonzalez, are still guiding me in a lot of ways. Dean Cernilio, who was a guest speaker in my Filipinx American history class. I think he's just an extraordinary person and scholar and teacher who continues to guide my thinking and my work. Let me see. Actually, on our own campus, I'm grateful to all the people in our department. I'm kind of the newest one, but Jason Chun and Kaylani Cook, Matt Kevert, Olivia Hopkins, have all been really helpful in just helping me be the kind of teacher I want to be at UH West, understanding our community, campus community. I'll give a shout out to some of the non-faculty, Ruel Velasco is a director of student services, and he creates such a warm campus community. There's just always our librarians. Kavena Komeiji and I have a great partnership. If people don't know, she's in charge of the Aloha Aina Lib guides, the library guides, research guides. And so I work with her. And also Alfie Garcia has been extraordinary librarian on our campus. Amy Nishimura in English also has been a great mentor to me. Yeah, I could go on and on, but I'll stop there. Yeah, I think that to borrow a phrase, it takes a village to make a good professor, it really does. Lots of mentoring to kind of know where you're at, know what your students need, and to keep it fresh, keep it relevant. And that's my commitment to keep on improving so that we can get more of the fabulous students from Kauai to choose UH West. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Dr. Compoc, for sharing with us today and challenging us to think critically about the world around us, and specifically being inclusive of other cultures and communities that make up our society. We like to ask one final question before you go, and that's, do you have any parting words of wisdom or advice that you would like to leave with our listeners?
I'll just do an absolutely shameless plug for the humanities. When I go to graduation every year, it becomes pretty obvious that the humanities is one of the smaller divisions on the campus. We have these huge number of students who want to major in like business and marketing and, Academy for Creative Media, and no disrespect to any of those, divisions, but I just think that it's so exciting when I'll just brag on this. I feel like the critical thinking that goes on in humanities is just unparalleled. And I really take pride in that. We're the division that's really putting some of the most critical questions on the table and refusing to sweep it under the rug. What you were saying, I think you mentioned like the geopolitical, the environmental, and the climate catastrophe is real. There is a genocide. There's several genocides happening in the world right now. What does it mean to be a human being? How many generations do we have left where life is sustainable on this planet? What are you really made of as a person? You know what I mean? What is your ethical core? What do you want to contribute to society? I take pride in being able to guide students to put some of those big questions on the table, do their best with with research tools and time for reflection to get solid answers on those. And to me, when you're really grounded in your values and you're really grounded in the kind of person that you are and what your ancestors wanted for you and what you want the next generation to receive from your generation, it kind of doesn't matter what job you get, because every day is an opportunity for you to live your values and to be in alignment. And so I just offer that to all the students who I know it can be scary. Your major doesn't match your job title, whatever it is. But to have that kind of daring and to say, no, I'm going to major in history and I'm going to trust that there is a place for me in the society and that I will get a job where I can have the kind of life that I want. And I'm here for it. If students want to talk story, whether you're a student right now or you're, thinking about it, I'm welcome to talk story with y'all. It's been a pleasure talking with both of you. And I look forward to more opportunities to connect.
Mahalo nui loa, Dr. Compoc. This was amazing, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And I know our listeners are going to love this conversation. So thank you again.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Compoc.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Today we're going to do something a little different, a little more freeform and talk story. We are sitting down with another amazing guest, Dr. Yazmine Romero, or as the cool kids call her, Dr. Yaz. Dr. Romero, aka Dr. Yaz, is the Humanities Division Chair at UH West Oahu, and she is also a legendary English professor. I had the pleasure and the privilege to take one of Dr. Yaz's classes this past semester, and I gotta say, it was one for the highlight reel. To all the students out there, if you have the opportunity to take one of her classes, jump on it. You will not regret it. Mahalo for coming on the podcast, Dr. Yaz. I got some solid questions for you today, and I know that you're going to have some incredible insights.
Thank you so much, Travis. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to hear that from you. And obviously, I'm open to whatever questions you want to roll my way. But it's also just a pleasure to have the students that were in your class and you, because that class was really about us working as a team to accomplish things. And that's generally how I view most of my classes. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, of course. So let's start off with a fun and easy question. One of the first things that we connected on was our shared love of music. So what artist or genre has been making your playlist lately?
That's a tough one because lately I've been listening to a lot of stuff I used to listen to when I was young. So it might really date me. But I've been listening a lot to like artists like Tori Amos. I really do also enjoy a lot of like Lady Gaga, that kind of stuff. It's kind of fun, to kind of dance and rock out to. But I also really love rock in general. I love A Perfect Circle, but they don't really do that much anymore. And then there's Queens of the Stone Age. There's a bunch of different artists, and I kind of like to sort of cast my net very widely. I also listen to a lot of Japanese music, enka music, which is like old traditional music that was like sang in like bars and is usually very sad, but I love it. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I've been I listen to a lot of mix of things, but I like to listen to things that kind of inspire me or like lyrics that really move me. But I also like to listen to artists that are supportive of a lot of things that I'm interested in.
Awesome. I love it. I'm a huge Queens of the Stone Age fan as well. Probably my all-time favorite band.
They're awesome. I wish I could see them in person or, in concert and stuff.
Same. I'm sure they'll tour out here eventually, though.
I hope so. I hope the Deftones comes too. I love them. So
the Deftones, don't even get me started. I mean, White Pony, that's a 10 out of 10 album, no doubt. All right, is it okay if we move into our first kind of intense question?
Definitely.
So, how does your role as both an English professor and the Humanities Division Chair at UH West Oahu influence your leadership decisions? In other words, what experiences do you aim to provide for humanities majors?
I think it's important to kind of start from where I started before I became a division chair. Because when you're a junior colleague, like a junior faculty, your senior faculty are very protective over you. And you're always looking for somebody to mentor you because you get right out of grad school and then you're kind of there flailing because you're like, okay, things are different now. I'm no longer in school because it's easy in school, right? In that sense. And I've always really enjoyed going to school. And so actually having to kind of transition into this position was challenging for me because it was just such a big change. And also I kind of missed Seattle a little bit, but I was also very fond about really wanting to come to Hawaii. Number one, because I have family here. And number two, because it kind of reminded me of where my grandma and grandpa are from, my mom is from, and I lived there for a few years, Saipan. And I just felt such a connection. But when I got here, like, the job itself was very, trying to find a mentor, which I did, but also trying to just navigate how to balance everything. But the number one thing that I remember is trying to make changes to the English concentration at West Oahu, because I'm from Rhet Comp, as well as language studies. So language and writing studies is basically my areas. And the program at the time when I came in was very literature focused. And so me and a few other junior colleagues got together and were like, let's make a change because this isn't reflecting who we are. And also literature focused departments generally are very traditional. And as you know me, I'm a very non-traditional type of person. And also I think it wasn't fair that students didn't know that there's more to English studies than just literature. And so we kind of met with everybody and everybody was like, yeah, I feel the same way. Like the English concentration faculty have been amazing, as has the humanities faculty in general. But as a young professor just starting out, it was just sort of like, like, what do I need to do? So you think a lot about class related things, teaching related things. So when I had the opportunity to sort of take on the division chair role, it's a different perspective, right? You have to think more about the bigger picture. You can't think, oh, just about my class. You have to think about the entire program. What are we doing with the program? How is it helping students to meet their goals? And how do we argue for more funding and things like that for our division? I will say that our admin has been very supportive of like many of our projects. Things that I've personally worked on are things like authentic assessment, which is basically a way for students to place that is more holistic in practice as opposed to just test-based. And so that was one thing. And then another thing that you were also part of, right? The Pueo Press, having an undergraduate scholarly or undergraduate journal. I don't know if it necessarily would be qualified as purely scholarly at this point, because we're hoping to have more creative works, multimodal works in there at one point. But I guess what I'm trying to say, and I hope this is coming through, is that you have to think about the bigger picture when you're a division chair, kind of, just like a department chair. You have to figure out what classes need to run and what classes should you support running, even if they're low enrolled. We can think all we want about what's happening in our class at that time, but I think blending my two roles as professor and division chair, I think that we need to think more than just the class, but the effects and the impacts and what the long-term investment is. Because humanities is battered down that we're not doing enough to serve the labor force. So we're not putting enough people, pipelining people to take jobs and things like that, which I find really problematic that is what is focused on, is this idea that we need to create a workforce. And generally that workforce in Hawaii is, this contentious line between tourism and business and a lot of the different like Native Hawaiian initiatives that are taking place that kind of seem to, there's just a lot of different perspectives going in, and it's actually a very challenging how do we get away from tourism? How do we create a different type of economy that isn't based on that? And so I think being a humanities major kind of helps you with that, because you think about it critically, you think about it historically, you think about it in different ways by, analyzing writing, analyzing different ways that people act and things like that, and studying patterns. So I guess for me, that's kind of what I'm aiming for humanities majors in my classes. And I think most of my colleagues would agree that we want to not only support and prepare students to have skills and strategies that are concrete, but also the messier part of being human and navigating different, shifts in like sociopolitical spaces and things like that, and having the tools that will help you think through, well, where do I stand? Why do I stand that way? How can I learn more with this other person so that maybe I can understand more about a particular situation and actually create some change? Yeah, I hope that answered the question. I hope that wasn't too roundabout.
No, it definitely did. That was excellent. And I think it's so important to not shy away from getting into those messy parts, like you said. We, as social beings, we naturally want to avoid getting uncomfortable. But the key is that's where the real change and the real progress comes from, when we have those deep, honest, and challenging conversations.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to focus so much on, oh, can you write a thesis this well? How is that really going to help you
Yeah.
in the long run? It will help you figure out how to make an argument, how to think through evidence, how to reach your audience and kind of get them to buy in. But at the end of the day, it's really about that critical thinking. It's really about that being reflective and also being aware that you don't know everything. And I kind of do that in my teaching too, because I don't assume that I know everything. That's why I don't particularly like falling into the traditional ways of grading students. And I know that you have a question for me with that, but just to speak to that, like I just got really tired of feeling like, okay, this number goes here and I'm evaluating it for this because I think it should be this way. And I think it's just so much more important to emphasize that relationship between mentor and mentee, because that's how I've learned the best. It's not that somebody tells me what to do, but it's somebody that pushes me to think more and to do something with that thinking and to be innovative and creative in all my solutions, but somebody that I can rely on to tell me the hard facts that I need to be aware of, or like, hey, in my experience, this is what's happened. I don't know if that's going to be what's happening with you, but you should think about it. I mean, I still connect a lot with my dissertation chair. She's been central to a lot of the things that I do, and I've always fallen back on just emailing her and asking how she's doing. And that kind of relationship, I think, is the kind of relation. And I also have mentors from when I was an undergrad at Boise State, and I still talk to them. Those kind of relationships are so long lasting and so meaningful. And when you have somebody to work with like that, there's yes, there's still a power dynamic. There always will be. To say that there isn't would be just silly. But it's that sense of trust and that sense of communicating with someone to bounce ideas off with. You may never see like completely eye to eye, but that's okay. And I think that's the problem. A lot of people think that it needs to be exactly like what I want it to be. Like that's a question that I get a lot. Like, how do you want this to be, Dr. Yaz? Like, do you want it to be like this? And a lot of students resist wanting to like the traditional grading. They want to have that. And it's because we've been taught that since we were going into the schooling system, right? That that's the way that you do it. But how seriously have grades really impacted people in the long term? Yeah, getting to grad school, it gets a little easier if you have higher grades. But at the same time, a lot of graduate schools are doing more of a holistic approach. They might be looking more at your writing. You might talk to people and things like that, and then make those connections. And then you might see that your foot's in the door. But I guess I'm trying to say a lot of famous people have failed. Like, they've even dropped out of school and they've become like just amazing, innovative people. And so really thinking about that. And I'm not saying I'm anti-school or anything like that, but I do think that school is the place, the space to make those mistakes, and you shouldn't be judged for that.
I think that's a really important point that cannot be emphasized enough. This is the place to learn, and making mistakes is, of course, part of that process. Now, to step back for a second, you mentioned that you still keep in touch with your dissertation chair and that you've maintained connections with mentors from your time in undergrad. So let's step into the shoes or the role of a student who just graduated from community college, and they are transferring over to UH West Oahu, and they are entering this new academic community. How should they approach building those relationships, building those connections with a division chair, with their professors, and with their advisors? What have you seen that has worked, and what do you think is missing from students coming into this new community?
I think number one, when you get into a class, the number one thing you should do is read the syllabus first. And I only say that because so many, and you see this on different various social media and various discussions, like the syllabus, when a student reads the syllabus and is able to refer back to it, then that means that the student is invested in the class, which can communicate a sense of like, I'm going to trust you as the teacher, I think. It can kind of, build a little bit of trust from the teacher's side. But also, I think students just need to reach out more. I can't tell you enough how many office hours I have sat in where it's been nobody. And, sometimes that's just sort of like, well, I could be, supporting students extra here, but So I would say the first step, and that's something that a lot of people talk about, like, is attend office hours. Even if it's once or twice in a semester, it can make a huge world of difference because you'll learn more about who this person is, what their expectations are, and then also ask them questions about what their expectations are of you. Now, a lot of instructors might not be like me. I don't know. I don't want to speak for them, but for me, I like to negotiate our expectations. Is this, something that is going to be viable? What are some of the, constraints that you have in your situation? Here's the constraints in mine. Let's figure a way to, meet and come together. And so I guess that key word there, negotiable, is a core component of my teaching and in general, like how I am as a professor and administrator, is that everything is negotiable in the sense that we need to understand as much as we can about the context, each other, in order to come together to do something. And so, yeah, I think the first step for a new student transferring over would be reach out. Also, look through the different professors and what they're teaching. And if something's interesting to you that they're teaching, and this is thinking forward about the capstone and the practicum, reach out to them, try to set up a time to meet, even if it's 10 minutes, just to talk about their interests. And like that could get you excited and interested too in doing this and this. And so I think it's just trying to communicate. And I know that's really difficult, especially if you're a student that's on another island. I think that can be really challenging, but that's why it's just super important to try to make that time to either do a quick phone call, at least once or twice a semester. I would say twice or at least twice. Once is good, but twice would be so much better because then, I had a student once where she experienced a huge change in her living circumstances, but she wanted to stay in the class. And so we negotiated the grading contract so that she would call me once a week and we would do an update and we would be on the phone, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes, just going over what she's doing, what her progress is, and then having her, make sure that she has her drafts in on time and stuff as far as the time that we decided. And that worked really well. And, that student was her writing got so strong towards the end, but also just her sense of, I would say, like, you can work with a professor. They're not, at least the ones that I know, are not scary. And if they are, that's try to break the ice and see. And sometimes not everyone's going to be, you're not going to align with them as well. And that's fine. Everybody's different. But when you find the people that you align with, those are the people that you want to stick with and continue to build things with. Attend events is another thing that you could do to connect with not just faculty, but potentially other students. If you're a distance ed student, some of our events are by Zoom, and it's just nice to see names and also just be a part of whatever event is happening. And I think that's important because no matter if you're on campus or not, there are ways to build community, and that's how I see faculty and students as a community. And so I think just approaching it in that way as somebody, as somebody that you want to consult with and maybe talk story with, just try not to be afraid to reach out.
I'm really glad that you brought up not being afraid to reach out, because when I reflect on my first semester at UH West Oahu, I was very rigid. That's the best way I can put it. I was rigid, overly professional, and totally afraid to go against the norm. So those office hours meetings were very tense. And looking back, I feel like my professors probably felt that way as well. So I think the key takeaway is it's okay to show your personality. It's okay to talk about what you're interested in and passionate about. But try to connect that with your professor's interest, your professor's expertise. It doesn't have to just be, here's my 3 questions, goodbye. And I think it's really important to show that you're human. We're in the humanities after all. We should be human. Getting over that initial, what is my role here? How do I talk to professors? What is my place? And just getting down to making those connections is super important. And part of that is, like you said, not letting those connections die once they're made. You may connect with a professor, but you only have the opportunity to take 1 or 2 of their classes. Well, you should probably still reach out to them in subsequent semesters to see how they're doing, what they're working on, what they've published recently, just to talk story. I think that's really important as well, and I'm glad that you brought that up.
I agree. And I guess another example of that is a previous student of mine who graduated, I believe he graduated in 2017. We've stayed connected. And then just this summer, we are publishing together because
Nice.
he's writing a creative piece and I'm writing a creative piece, and there's this opportunity. And so I just want to communicate to people that are listening that things happen and you can't even know what to expect is going to happen. But sometimes it's just like you got to take a leap of faith and really try to stay in touch with people. And I know that can be kind of hard, especially with the pandemic, kind of creating this huge disconnect, but it's also created a lot more ways to connect, just online kind of spaces and things like that. So no, yeah, I agree.
That's really cool that you're going to be publishing alongside a former student. That's so amazing. I wish I could do that one day. Is it okay if we hop into the educational philosophy side of things, specifically the grading contract?
Yes.
Okay. So your class was the first time I was ever exposed to a grading contract. And I'm sure that's probably the case for a lot of the students, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, it is.
So I guess my question is, can you tell us like about that approach to use a grading contract and how like tangibly it benefits the overall class dynamic?
Yeah. So that was obviously at a time when I think the pandemic hit. And I was also still slowly becoming more and more frustrated with traditional grading systems because, as I said earlier, it's just having that grade held over a student's head. And I know that's how I have felt. It feels really frustrating. And I guess I want to return back to this office hour thing. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you really try and you don't mesh well. So, like in my undergrad, I wrote a paper and I got a C. And I'm one of those people that's always been like, I have to get the best grade possible. Okay. So I'm speaking to this from a lot of students that I know. So I went and I sat for like, I don't know, it must have been 2 hours with my literature professor. And we just went over page by page what I needed to change. And it was the most grueling thing. And she still only gave me a B. And but I learned from that in the sense that, okay, why is it that the effort that I put into this isn't being reflected in the actual grading? Like, I really doubt that a lot of my peers at the time were also meeting with this professor for 2 or 3. I mean, as a professor now, I know that's really not happening unless the student is super excited or like they're a capstone student and things like that.
Mhm.
Then we have to meet because we have work to get done. But that frustrated me. And I think that's really stayed with me because I see these students that just put so much effort into things and it just feels like it doesn't pay off in the traditional grading scheme. Whereas a grading contract, which actually grew out of anti-racist pedagogy, allows students to shift away from this focus on earning a top grade to how do I work with feedback? How do I make that strengthen my writing? In that process of working with feedback, translating to writing, and then sharing and getting further feedback on that cycle is what a grading contract focuses on. And it makes it so that students don't have to think so much about, well, this is the standard or this is the standard. It's more about, okay, I'm going to try this idea out. I'm going to see what happens. And whatever feedback I get, I'm going to work with it. And I'm going to try and figure out a way to strengthen what I'm doing in this paper. And it might change my paper, but I'm going to take a leap anyways. And so the grading contract in and of itself is really based upon that kind of idea. And the contract portion of it is that you will turn in at least 80 to 85%, depending on whoever you're getting the grading contract from. 85% of your work will be turned in on time and I always have this in the spirit and manner, which basically means within the expectations that we've discussed in the class and how it aligns with the assignment prompt and things like that. And have you met this? I do word counts as opposed to page counts. And I try to be fairly flexible, but at the same time, I want to make sure people are putting in their work, but really thinking about what they're saying, not just getting it done. So with that 80 to 85%, every student that does that level of work will get a B. Okay, because that's what that is. If a student wants to do more than that, then they can potentially do something additional. And I've learned throughout the process to make these additional projects not something that's just a super huge additional added weight, but something that's related to the class that they can then turn into something that they can do in the future, like do something with. So like, you know, revise your CV, or for my class coming up in fall, it might be write your teaching philosophy, things like that. And so it's just making sure it's all interconnected and all in support of a student's lifelong learning, as opposed to it's just this class and it's this grade. And I will tell you that, yes, there's so many students that resisted at first, but once they get it, I have just found that the work that I've seen in those classes is just phenomenal. And people's feedback to each other as peers is unmatched, because we're focusing on how to give feedback that's going to be something that is worthwhile, not just great job or I don't really agree with this. It's more like, your use of this sentence was really compelling. Do you think you could add more here and here so that as a reader, I can really attach to that? And that's the kind of feedback that students are giving. It's that level. And so I have just found that it's a better way to have class, because it's not about the grade. It's about the feedback, working with others, and then trying to do the best possibly, the best that you can. And that trying is what matters. The effort is that default contracted grade. You do more, something additional. Okay. If you turn everything on time, then you also get a little boost too. So there's a lot of different elements, but I think what I think is most important is that having that shift away from thinking about grades is so important, because like I said earlier, what are grades really going to do? Like, yeah, I'm a straight A student coming out, but did that help me in this situation where I had to quickly pivot because something went wrong? Someone didn't call into work? No. So I just think that there's a really big emphasis on experience, collaboration, and innovation with the grading contract that there isn't there can be in traditional grading. I'm not going to say traditional grading is useless, but I have found that grading contract is so much better. And when I do have to use more traditional kind of schemes, which I do for my summer English 200 courses, because there's just such a short period of time, because the grading contract takes time. You have to spend at least a couple weeks getting used to it, and then continue to ask me and negotiate with me. Well, what does this mean? Does this mean I'm still following the grading contract? I don't know. Is this going to affect it? And so it's like that kind of communication, I think, is so much more worthwhile, because it makes it just so much more transparent too. And not just like this, you're just going to get whatever you get at the end of the semester. And you got to try your best and then just exhale and hope that you landed it right, which I don't like to do. I like to make sure everybody knows what their standing is with the contract before the grades go out, because I just think that's just bad.
You just hit on something really interesting a second ago. When you're in a class that utilizes a quote-unquote traditional grading structure, the reward, so to speak, tends to come when grades post. But the distinction is, in a course that uses a grading contract, the reward is the class itself. It's the conversation, it's the feedback, and the moments of exchange. The more you participate, the more you're going to get out of it. It's so much more than just an A on a transcript. It's building a community. It's building a team.
And those are the skills that are going to get you hired. It's not going to be because you did this amazing essay in English, whatever. It's because you put in that work. You know how to work with people now. You know how to give good feedback. You know how to read closely. You know how to think about the multiple perspectives that go into this one idea. And I don't know, I just think it's kind of exciting. And I will be honest, like, some of the most successful English majors have been people that have been dual. So they've been like dual humanities, dual English with business, for instance, or with education. a lot of those people that get both of those seem to do really well. And I'm not just saying, you can also just be a humanities major and do great. But I will say that education is not about labor. It's not, it should not be about that. But our institutions kind of make it that way. And so we have to respond to that. And so a lot of the students that I have known have gone into teaching, writing, and different things like that, but still somewhat related, right? I think that's what I'm trying to say too, is that it's not just about how are you going to sell yourself once you move out into the real world. It's also how are you going to navigate the issues that you're going to face in the real world. Things are going to happen. I mean, and you got to get through it, and you got to figure out ways to do that, whether or not you have support or not. And hopefully you do. But that's another reason why we shifted towards making another language required for humanities majors, because, and as a linguist, I really firmly believe that most places around the world, they speak multiple languages, and we are far, far behind from catching them. Now, Hawaii is a little different. If I speak from, like, let's say where I was born, like Idaho, yeah, very monolingual, meaning one language only, right? And it was always expected that it would be English. And as a matter of fact, that kind of perspective is kind of what impacted my mom and my mom's family from not teaching me Chamorro, because they didn't want it. My grandpa didn't want it to interfere with my English, because he wanted me to be successful at the university. He wanted me to get my degree. And God bless him. I love that he was so invested in my education, but I wish, because now there's like a revitalization of Chamorro and Saipan. And so I think they're kind of following what Guahan is doing, but it's so exciting to see that a lot of my cousins' kids they now have indigenous names as opposed to just Catholic names. And so I think that's just exciting. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'm going anywhere with that, but I think that the humanities has offered me that perspective. And it's just important for us to keep pushing that, because humanities is so important. I mean, navigating social media, figuring out, there's also this field called digital humanities, which is the field that I really focus on when I teach Humanities 300. What you're basically doing too, like podcasts, that's the project that students do in that class, is they create a podcast.
That's
And they
cool.
can decide whatever kind. They can do interview like this. They can do a story. I've had some people do dramatic interpretations of things. And so it's just kind of exciting.
I really liked how you mentioned earlier how some of the most successful students were not just humanities students, but they were from other disciplines like business. That's really interesting because, I don't know, I love multidisciplinary work. So, are there any other reasons that students outside of the humanities should consider enrolling in a history or English course? If you had to give your 30-second elevator pitch to a business major, what would it be?
Do you want to be able to use your language strategically? Do you want to be able to understand human behavior in such a way that isn't just correlating numbers, because that doesn't always work, as the stock market shows us? Things like that. Do you want to dedicate yourself to, missions and visions that align with what you want for the world to be better? Or how do you want to serve your community members? Doing that kind of work is basically qualitative research, right? You have to reach out, and it can be quantitative too. Quantitative does not necessarily mean it can't be from the humanities. A lot of humanities fields do quantitative methods, but they mix it, right? Because they don't want to just look at this overarching pattern, but they want to look at the smaller, more anecdotal stuff. What else is going on? And so I think anybody outside the humanities should really look to at least taking a few more humanities courses, because you're working with people. You're not working with numbers all the time. You're not working just with parts of people, let's say for like science. You're not just working with like different kind of trials and tests. You're working with people, and you need to be able to communicate with people to make a difference. And I just think it makes it so much more meaningful and more aware of the world. Yes, it can probably just, like, I always destroy my students' love of Disney in my English 100 courses because of all of the, sexism, racism, accent discrimination, things like that are happening. But it's a good, it's a good like thing to do, because you're just seeing more. And with what's happening politically, that is important. You need to know, you need to be able to do research. You need to be able to think about different perspectives and be critical, and also think about ways to take action. Because humanities, they really, like a lot of people that come from the humanities or other fields that sort of build upon it, like they're about resistant knowledge. They're about social action. They're about being active and being advocates with other people. And so I think that it's just super important. I know that was longer than an elevator talk, but I will
Yeah.
just say you wanna communicate, you wanna work with people, you wanna work with the world, then you need to be taking some more humanities courses to understand the world. Because if you don't understand the world, you're just gonna be going in there without any of this knowledge.
I love that. And yeah, it was longer than an elevator pitch, but it was beautifully said and absolutely amazing. So it's all good. What are some of the classes that you're teaching this coming semester that our students, my peers, can enroll in?
So this is the only problem with being a division chair. I tried to do 2 classes while doing it, and it's just too much. So I'm only teaching 1 class in fall, and it's the class that I teach every other year, which is 300F, with this teaching expository writing in K through 12. And that class is really engaging for people, even if you're not planning to teach. If you're planning to go to grad school in the humanities, you're going to have to teach. And I'm only saying that because there are so many opportunities to get assistance with your tuition and with living. I mean, that's how I did it when I went to grad school. I got fully funded, but I had to be a teaching assistant. And so what that means is you teach a class and you get your tuition waived and you get other funding. So I think teaching is super important. And even if you're not going to become a teacher, it's important to know how to talk to people and be able to communicate things to people that don't have the knowledge that you have or don't have a shared background, because that's how you connect to other people. That's how you open up doors, is by making that kind of striving forward for that. And so 300F is a really interesting class because we really focus on pedagogy, but we also focus on being critically reflective of ourselves and what biases we bring in when we are thinking about teaching and how we work through that. And then next spring, I'm going to be teaching 456B again. I most likely will be teaching that every spring, but I also do teach creative writing courses. I really want to teach a nonfiction writing course. And then I usually teach like intro to creative writing course 313, I think it is. And so those are pretty fun. I really like to bridge creative with multimodal and with just thinking through a bunch of different types of theories. I think that's really fun. So
Nice. And English 456B is a great transition into Pueo Press. So let's talk about DPP. I had the privilege to take that course last semester, and we are doing some incredible things in the humanities regarding Pueo Press. So Dr. Yaz, can you tell us more about that and the collaboration between faculty and students?
yeah, that actually emerged because a student tried to submit an article to one of the other journals in the UH system, and they said no, because they're not a student registered under their campus. They're at West Watt. And that kind of irked me. um, but I also think that it sort of motivated me to think, well, what can we do with this? And so me and Dr. Pock got together, built a proposal, and argued that we need to create a space for our students' voices and their writing. And we need to do it in such a way that it's grounded in the humanities, which means humanities faculty, not just humanities faculty, but like there is a mission and vision that is closely and intricately tied to our discipline, which is the critical thinking, the critical reflection component, but also the ways to translate academic writing into public writing. Because I think that's very important, because academic writing can be very overwhelming. And I'm kind of like bell hooks, like if you're gonna write academically and not and people can't understand that, like lay people or even just new students, you can't actually translate that for them, then why are you doing it? It's just gonna sit there. And so that's kind of also part of Pueo Press, really making it so that students can see what other students are doing in writing and just have a space for that. Potentially it is shared with the world, and it just gets that kind of representation out there, but it also makes it so that we're showing what our community is made up of. And I think that's just super exciting. And whatever it is that students want to submit, like we have 4 categories right now. First is first year writing, because so many students go through first year writing that it's important to really embrace that a lot of students are learning about their different writing skill set. They're learning about, oh, this is the difference between high school and college level writing. They may be even transitioning to, okay, so when I'm going to do research, I need to really think about these different things to do. And so to showcase what they've done in those classes, which we have 2 parts, right, for our first year writing program, English 100 or 100T, and then English 200. We want to have a place to showcase that work. That's a lot of work. That's like a full year. And the writing's amazing, like it grows. And so that's exciting. And then upper division writing intensive courses, students do so many cool projects in a lot of our WI courses. Where are those going? Like, that's a lot of work and it should be showcased. And I think doing the podcast for Humanities 300 really spoke to me in that way, because people need to see these things. They need to learn more. You never know. You might have a new interest all of a sudden. And then we have capstone and directed readings, which I think are very scary for a lot of, students starting out. But if we actually have some of those samples and they're in this journal for students to like read, then they can get ideas for their own. And I think that's really exciting. And then I think, is that all of the category? Oh, creative writing. And so we have a dedicated space for creative writing, because our creative writing track in English is very, I would say popular, but also just robust, like strong. And I am so impressed by the work that students do in those 300, 400 level courses. And I think that giving more space and time for those students is super important. And obviously we're hoping to branch out to include multimodal work, because that's something I'm very invested in. And so obviously we'll be working more with like creative media folks. Thinking through reviews of like local events is another thing, to make it more about maybe connecting with the public. Could be a really good strategy too. So there's a lot of things coming up, but the Pueo Press at its heart is really just about showcasing student work at West Oahu, and also embracing the multiple languages that we bring with us into our work. So the Pueo Press also encourages submissions in Hawaiian, Pidgin, and English. And we are committed to that. If anybody's listening out there and wants to submit, please do, because we're super excited to sort of see how the first issue shapes up. And yeah, we'll be sending out a call for that, I think, beginning of fall. So I hope I explained that.
Yeah, of course you did. It was great. And I think the foundation of the Pueo Press is solid. It's ready to launch. But I really can't wait to see it grow and how far it will reach in the next 5 to 10 years, what it becomes. So to all the listeners, if you want to be a part of UH West Oahu's history and its legacy, submit a project to Del Pueo Press. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I think it's a long-term investment, and eventually I would like it to be where the faculty mentor or editor, right, rotates not just within our division, but maybe into other disciplines and divisions to get different takes, different shifts. But that's a work in progress. That's probably not going to happen for the next few years. We've got to establish everything first. But I will just say it's been great to work with students on the project, because working with colleagues is fine, right? Dr. Pak is awesome. And everybody that was serving on the faculty committee was amazing. But the passion that students have, and just how selfless they are when working on this stuff to put it together, was just, it was just so great. I don't know how to express it without saying totally cheesy, but like I was just super impressed and just so affected, because students just wanted to work on it because they wanted to get this opportunity out there for their peers, even if they aren't able to publish in it. That's what they want to do, because they think that it's worthwhile for them to see their name in print, online, and be able to access it. And I just think that just shows that sharing knowledge is so important, and collaborating with others is so important, and continuing to be aware and have that experience of going through that process is just, it's going to add so much more to someone's writing sort of history or anything like that. But yeah, I just thought it was just, yeah, the students are just, they were awesome and they did so much. And I'm so thankful for them, including you, Travis. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
it just was different. It was a different vibe. It felt very positive and everybody felt like we were doing something for, with a purpose. It's not just about the class. And that goes back to the grading contract. I wish all classes could be like that. And I strive to do that, to make a project so that's what the outcome is, but that project has meaning beyond just academia. It has meaning across that line.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be the one to say the cheesy thing. It was a magical experience because you're creating something that's a legacy for the campus, like you said. It goes beyond the individual, beyond the class. It really benefits the entire campus community and beyond because you never really know how far things will impact. It's going to be amazing, and I can't wait to see what the next 5 to 10 years brings for Pueo Press.
Me neither. And I think that we can see it should launch next fall. So this fall, we'll do the call, we'll get all the submissions. And then in spring, we should be able to start doing the copy editing and the manuscript preparation. And then in summer, we'll get everything fine tuned so that it's ready to be like published in fall 2025. And we're going to have probably like a little launch party at some point. I know we promised each other we would, so we'll have to figure out a way to make that align. But definitely towards the end of fall, because I think a lot of people from the 456B last semester are going to be graduating. So I think it's important to sort of, yeah, celebrate a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Yeah, so I got one final question for you, and I like to end all of my segments with this question, and it's kind of open-ended, but I think it's powerful. So, do you have any parting words of wisdom or advice that you would like to leave with our listeners?
Yes, I do. So when I was, as an undergrad, and then even in graduate school, about when I was at my master's in Japan. I was taking, yeah. So I was in a master's program there. I was always a quiet person. I never really said much. I did go to office hours. Yeah, I told you the story. I really tried. I was also a writing center tutor, and that actually kind of was a random thing that happened. Just taking a class that I enrolled late for, but then me and that professor, we became such good friends in the sense that like, he's like, okay, I thought you were just going to drop out the next night, but you didn't. And so this is cool. And so he really supported my writing. And then he committed me to the writing center. And that's where I got started. And that's kind of how a lot of students, like, they blossom when that happens. It's just cool when you get those opportunities to actually take on a teaching role or like consulting role. It's just really neat. But I guess my piece of advice, though, would be try to push yourself out of your comfort zone sooner. I know that for me, it took a little while, but now I kind of enjoy those moments of meaningful discomfort, as I believe Bell Hooks says, in situations where, wow, my boundaries are being tested here. I'm hearing all these different perspectives, and I need to figure out a way to, navigate and react to that. But having those tools that I've learned from just with other students, with my mentors, through my writing, through supporting the humanities division, I just feel like you just want to take advantage of as much as you can and try not to be scared of being uncomfortable because it's going to happen. And if you avoid it, then you're not going to be able to come up with ways to respond to it. So use your classroom spaces to do that and have fun with it too. Like, yeah.
I think growth really comes when we step outside of our comfort zones. And like you said, instead of trying to avoid getting uncomfortable, I think it's really beneficial to dive headfirst into it, embrace it. Making a podcast can be pretty uncomfortable sometimes, but I'd like to think I've become a better host and a better speaker throughout this process. So
I can tell it in your voice. Yes.
awesome. Yeah. So get out there, get uncomfortable, challenge your preconceived notions, and yeah, grow. I think
Yeah, and
that's
don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. It's okay. We're all gonna fail at some point in our life, no matter how organized or like on top of things we are. We will always have that moment, and we learn the best in moments of failure and discomfort than we do from moments of comfort and success. And I think that's really true.
absolutely, Dr. Yaz. And with that, I want to say thank you for coming on the podcast. This was amazing. I loved
Thank you.
every second of it. I wish there was more hours than the day. We could do an entire podcast series, just me and you.
I know, right? We might have to do another one with the Pueo Press coming up.
For sure, I'd love that. Let's make it happen. Mahalo again, Dr. Yaz. Aloha. So today, we're sitting down with a very special guest, the legendary Kealohi Perry. Kealohi is the College Success Advisor for the Social Sciences and Humanities divisions at UH West Oahu. From the very first time I met Kealohi, she has been incredibly supportive. And since then, each time I meet with her, I gain a sense of clarity and direction. Mahalo for coming on the podcast, Kealohi. The listeners are going to love this. Let's start with an easy question. How are you? How is your summer going?
Aloha, Travis. Thank you so much for having me today. It's quite an honor to be on this podcast. I am doing really well. West Oahu's been busy with freshman orientations and transfer orientations. And then for me personally, I've been really busy this summer. I have 2 little boys, and we are in the thick of baseball season and rounding that out this summer. And then I also dance hula. I'm getting ready this weekend for a hula performance at Prince Lot Hula Festival on Oahu. So lots of good and exciting things. Happy to be here.
Nice. That's awesome. And thank you so much again for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Is it cool if we hop into the next question?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I think one of the most important skills students can develop is self-advocacy. Can you walk us through some of the key concepts of self-advocacy?
Yeah, definitely. So I had to really take some time to think about this and try to come up with a definition for myself of what this looks like. So I think for me, self-advocacy looks like the ability for people to speak up for themselves. And what I tack on to that is with aloha and kindness. And so it's understanding yourself, your strengths, your challenges, your own goals, what you've got going on, and thinking and brainstorming about what support you might need and being able to communicate your needs to others when you need it. So I think that's what self-advocacy looks like for me. Again, it may look different for others, but that's just something that comes to mind for myself.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Kealohi. It's so important for students to approach bumps in the road with grace, and having the confidence to actually reach out and ask for help is major. And if I can add on, I think it's important for students to take a second to breathe when bumps in the road do happen. Very few administrative processes require an immediate then and there email response.
Yes.
And the gut reaction is often like, oh my God, the world's ending. I'm not going to graduate, et cetera, et cetera. Take a day to read through the email, figure out what's going on, do some research, and then reach out if you need. Don't let the emotion overwhelm you in that moment. I've been there. I'm sure all students have been there at one point or another. I wouldn't say this means to wait till the last minute, because that will only create more stress, but don't let the immediate stress take over either.
Yeah, definitely. It's okay to take a pause. It's okay to sit in those emotions and feel those emotions and feel the frustration or whatever that you're feeling, but just take a moment. And I like that. That's a great tip, Travis.
And I think the key takeaway is if you need help, it's there. You just have to be able to speak up and know what you're actually asking for, right?
Yeah. And it's okay sometimes to not know what you're asking for and just ask the question and talk it through with your advisor. That way we can go back and forth and figure out what's actually happening, what's the root of the issue, and provide options and provide safe spaces to have those conversations and then find a way to positively move forward together.
That actually kind of leads into my next question. How can advisors support students in developing effective self-advocacy skills?
For me, the first step is really creating safe spaces for students, building pilina and building relationships with students so that they know that I genuinely care about them and that I'm trying to understand their needs, understand where they're coming from, and really encourage them to ask questions, encourage them to do their own research. My job as a college success advisor is to provide you resources and options and help you understand how to navigate this university system. But at the same breath, I've realized over the years that I have to share with students that I respect your decision, and that decision will look different from student to student. And there's no judgment on my end, but I want to provide you your options so you can make informed choices. And I think creating those safe spaces for students in that way and saying that out loud is really important. And I've tried to change the way that I interact with students and say those things so that there's no assumptions, right? And people know where I'm coming from. And I think that leads to creating spaces where students can advocate for themselves and develop those skills.
Transparency. That's amazing. Speaking of options, transfer students are presented two main options when they graduate at the community college level, either in-person versus distance education. So throughout your time working with distance education students, would you say you've identified any strategies that are particularly effective at easing that transition into distance education at UH West Oahu?
There's probably many strategies, and I probably won't list them all, but a few that come to mind for me are really creating your own community and network of support here at UH West Oahu. And that's sometimes hard when you already have your network of support at your community college. So I try to think of it as the perspective of you're not leaving your network of support at your previous institution, you're gaining an additional network of support, an additional community of support that is here for you. But that takes time to build those pilina and those relationships, and it doesn't happen instantly. And it can feel uncomfortable sometimes in that transition. And so I just encourage you to reach out to your faculty, your instructors, reach out to your college success advisors, reach out to your student affairs professionals for support, reach out to your fellow classmates. Create that support, and also your family and friends are support as well. Everybody in your life is part of that support network. And so for me, that's one of the biggest tips, building that pilina with new people. And I know that can be uncomfortable sometimes and overwhelming. I think another one for me, specifically for advising, is schedule an appointment with your college success advisor so that you have dedicated time to meet with us one-on-one, and we can focus on you and focus on your needs. Zoom is the best way to do that because we can meet each other. We can physically see one another when we don't have the opportunity to hop on each other's islands or across the continent. We have some students on the continent as well. So doing Zoom appointments are great and having that dedicated time. And then I think another tip, just observation that I've seen over the years is have access to a computer, reliable internet, and all of the tools that you need to be a distance learner. It is amazing how hard it can be if you don't have the technology to help support yourself to be able to access things. And that can be really challenging as well. So those are just a few things that come to mind, but I'm sure there's many more.
I'm glad you brought up some of the practical advice, like access to computers. For those who don't know, the Transfer Center here at Kauai CC has laptops available for loans in case you need one. Super cool. Reliable internet on Kauai can be a little difficult to find, but we have this amazing distance education classroom on the second floor of the library that has lightning fast Wi-Fi.
Woohoo!
And yeah, it's great. And I'm also glad that you said to meet with your college success advisor to gain that dedicated time to talk one-on-one. Would you say there's a optimal amount of meetings a student should attend, or are there key points students should come meet with their advisor? And what should students do to prepare for those meetings? Sorry, I know that's kind of a three-part question.
Yeah, so you'll help me make sure I answer all those parts. It really depends on the student and their needs. Every student may need to meet more or less, depending upon what they have going on in their lives and what type of support that they need to get them to the place that they need to be. So minimally, I would say at least once a semester to check in with your college success advisor, if not at least once an academic year, because a lot can change throughout the semesters and throughout the academic year. And you do want to try to meet with your college success advisor prior to registration. So for example, as we are entering the fall semester, The schedule for classes for the fall came out in mid to late March, and the registration happened in the beginning of April. So you kind of want to meet with us before the really peak busy times of registration happen. And then same thing in the fall semesters, we're preparing for the spring. Schedule of classes gets released, mid to late October. Registration happens the first week in November. And so, meeting with us prior to registration is really important. I think to prepare for your appointments or any conversations that you need to have, research prior to your appointment. So what I mean by that is log into your STAR Academic Essentials tab, go over your program requirements, engage with STAR by clicking on all those incompletes, jot down questions if you're like, wait a minute, I don't quite understand what this means. I don't know maybe how to navigate STAR. I don't understand what this particular requirement means. Jot down those questions that you have for us so that you come prepared for the appointment so that we can make sure we focus on the questions that you have and try to address those pieces so that we can partner together. Also, I'll throw in a last plug of you also have faculty advisors, not just college success advisors. And I would encourage students to also meet with their faculty advisors as they are the experts in your area of study, and they can really assist in diving deeper with detailed conversations about career and educational goals, opportunities within the community that maybe we're not always aware of as college success advisors. And so I'd like to throw that plug in as well, that there's also your faculty advisor to complement the relationship and support that you have with your college success advisor.
It's amazing the layers of support students have. For distance education students, we have college success advisors, we have faculty advisors as well, and then we also have the distance education academic support specialists. So there's so many different layers of support, and that's why it's so important to build those connections, because you always have that support there. Great stuff, Alohi. I'm loving this conversation. This is great.
Awesome.
I like to close out these segments with kind of an open-ended but powerful question. Do you have any parting words of wisdom or advice that you would like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, definitely. First thing that comes to mind is I want you folks to know that you are important and you are a valued community member, and we care about you as people, and that we understand that sometimes life is hard and school is hard, but, really encourage you to create your community of support with your family and your friends, also here at UH West Oahu, as well as on your island or wherever you are as a distance learner. And then mai hila hila, don't be ashamed. We're here to help you. We're here to support you. And please reach out to us.
So important. Don't have shame. Seriously, don't have shame. And with that, I want to say mahalo nui loa for coming on the podcast, Kealohi. This was fantastic. You've helped me so many times throughout my academic journey at UH West Oahu. I seriously couldn't have done it without you. And I have a call to action for all UH West Oahu students. Reach out and thank your college success advisors when you're close to graduating. They do so much, and they are real heroes in my eyes. So with that, thank you again. I know this is going to help so many students.
Thank you, Travis. It's been a pleasure to work with you today and to do this podcast. I tried something new, and so really exciting. Yeah, I'm just thankful that I have the opportunity to work with wonderful students like yourself. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kealohi. So now we're sitting down with Anuhea to talk about the ways to get to campus in real life as a distance education student. Anuhea, I know you're excited for this segment. I'm pumped for this one too. So let's jump right in. It may sound a little like an oxymoron, but why should a distance education student go to campus?
First off, I think the reason you should visit campus is to create a greater sense of community and connection to a place. It could be visiting anywhere, but when you go to a school, like feeling connected to that school is super important. Seeing it in real life, seeing the library, seeing all it has to offer will only in your mind be like, oh, this is the place where my teacher teaches from. Oh, this is the office in which my professor's at. So I think visiting the space in which you're learning from is only going to help you be a better learner and more connected to the school.
Yeah, 100%. I've gone to UH West Oahu's campus twice so far. And each time I've gone, it's been a super memorable and amazing experience. Through those trips, I've gained such a great connection with my faculty mentors as well as my peers. And I really would recommend all students to try to get there as soon as possible. So Anuhea, what type of events have you taken students to in the past? Are there any standout moments or experiences from one of those past trips?
So yeah, as Travis would call them, adult field trips. That's what we do.
100%. Yeah, adult
They're actually
field-
super fun. And I realized West Oahu in person offers a lot of experiences, events for their students there, but as distance learning students, you don't get the same opportunities. So I thought, if there's a way, which our grant can provide for you, is for you to experience those in real life. The first one I ever took the students to was a small group of students. We went to the BUSA, Business Administration. They have a Kukulu networking event, which happens in the fall, and they bring professionals from the community to meet with students in a group setting on tables, and they have poo-poos, and they get to talk story and share about their career growth and whatever industry they're in, and so students get to meet people. I took a group of 3 students, and they really enjoyed it. So that was the first time I ever took students, and it worked out really well. After that, I started taking students just to visit the campus, and we took groups of 3 and we took groups of 12. Logistically, it was different each time, but we always did a tour of the campus, and I think the highlight for the students were to visit the cafeteria and actually eat lunch on campus, which unfortunately here at Kauai Community College, we do not have a cafeteria at the moment that we get to eat at, so going to eat at one, which the food is also delicious. Shout out to the spot at West Oahu. I want to say the highlight of my trips that I've gone on thus far were we took an extensive tour of the creative media building, which I would have never been able to do. And they have so much amazing facilities, and they have a coffee bar there and study space, and it was really great. But my second favorite was the Student Research Symposium, which I've never actually been to one, even as an undergraduate student myself or graduate student. And to see the students' posters and also have some of our Kauai students present at was really, really amazing to see their work come to life. And then also meet other instructors and professors that I've emailed with and see them in real life too. That was a great way to connect and then see student work.
Absolutely. I have to echo what Anuhea is saying here. I've actually had the privilege to travel with her, bringing students from Kauai. It is a really rewarding experience. Driving the vans and you're escorting the students to the campus, you really get to hear their excitement. Many of them are friends before they even come on this trip. They're just looking around, checking out Oahu. And then when they get to the campus, they see the library and they see the cafeteria. You can see that it's a really good time for all that are involved. When it comes down to the logistics of these trips, there's a lot of planning that takes place. But are there any upfront costs involved for distance education students, such as covering transportation expenses like plane tickets or Uber rides? What are they responsible for when it comes down to that traveling?
$0.
Awesome.
$0, but you do need to respond promptly to my emails and come in to fill out certain forms that are necessary for travel.
Nice. And how can a student find out about upcoming trips?
Check your emails. Check your emails, seriously. I email about these trips all the time and I get like 5% response rates. So if you see it, email me back and most likely you'll get to hop on a trip. But you can also talk to your counselor, whether it's your KCC counselor or West Oahu counselor, and they can refer you to me as well. I'll be glad to hop on the next trip.
You've mentioned about some of the really cool spots on the West Oahu campus. Personally, what is your favorite spot?
My favorite spot is actually the garden and the hale area outside in the back corner. I love to make leis, and they have so much lei making flowers, plumeria, a'ali'i, they have the blue pea flower, but they also have like vegetables and eggplant and cucumbers, all kinds of greens, like collard greens and kale growing there. You would never think that this lush space is urban campus. So it's really nice to see. They also have a huge uluniu, which is like coconut tree grove out there as well. There's a lot of cool stuff growing, and it's just like a nice break up to the big buildings.
I'm going to toss that same question over to you, Travis. You've traveled over there a couple times. What's your favorite spot on the campus?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I really like the upstairs of the library. There's like this one particular spot where you can sit underneath these like really cool lights and you look out and you can see the giant lawn, you can see the opening of campus, but you can also see the mountains all the way out. It's just a vibe. You got to check it out for sure. And what about you, Dr. Schwab? What's your favorite spot?
I got to double down. The library is probably one of the most impressive buildings on campus. You also got a shout out to the Creative Media Center. They have a little cafe that's down there in the bottom. They have all this technology, all these cool spaces that you can create and just dive into your studies. I got to say that's a close second. And I think that's one of the big attractive things of West Oahu is that you have all these different spaces that are so unique to themselves, the library, the garden, and the Creative Media Center. And you pick what your flavor is and what you're feeling like that day.
Yeah, 100%. So who's ready to take a flight? Let's go check it out.
Oh, I'm in.
Are there any cool events coming soon on Ohio?
Yes, in fact, we have one trip coming up this fall semester with students on Tuesday, September 10th. So if you're interested, if that fits your calendar, email me.
You heard her. Email her. Get over to West Oahu's campus as soon as you can. It's a great time, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, thanks, Anohea, for being here today.
Thanks, guys.
Aloha, and welcome back to Transfer Talk. As you know, my name is Travis, and I'm sitting down with my co-host, Dr. Schwab. Here we are, at the end of another series, and I gotta say, this one makes me super proud. In this series, we covered so much information I wish that I would have known during my first semester at UH West Oahu. During Foot in the Door, we met with Dr. Compoc from UH West Oahu's History Department, Dr. Yazmine Romero from UH West Oahu's English Department, and Alohi Perry, the College Success Advisor for the Humanities and the Social Sciences. In each one of those interviews, we stressed the importance of connecting with faculty and finding your people. This can be done by attending office hours and participating in virtual events that are offered by student services. Anuhea also discussed opportunities to visit campus in real life via events like student symposiums.
Yeah, Travis, I can't emphasize enough the importance of connecting with faculty and advisors at the UH West Oahu campus. Learning their office hours, setting up a time to meet with them, and coming prepared with specific questions to pick their brains because they come from a wealth of experience and they really want to see you succeed and give you the appropriate directions for your studies there. So what you can do is you can talk to your professors and dive into some of the topics that might interest you the most. And I'd also take time to participate in the virtual events that are being offered through student services. I think these are really cool times for you to get involved with some of the social aspects of the university and feel that sense of connection. The university has some great events, such as the spring break kickoff and others that include possibly a virtual participation element that you can get involved in. This particular event gives students a glimpse of what makes the No'iau Center a valuable resource for UH West Oahu students, where you can go in for tutoring, you can go in for just advice, information, direction. And this event is open to all UH West Oahu students. It's really helpful to know the center, to know its staff. Another event is called West and Relaxation. Yes, you heard me right. I was stumbling over the words. I wasn't stumbling over the words, I should say. It's just a fun play on those words, West and we, which I see as, working together in community. And of course, we're UH West Oahu. So yeah, West and Relaxation. This event is a time that you can recalibrate and engage in a relaxing, fun, stress-free online environment and kind of reward yourself after midterms and those mid-semester papers that had you stressed out for a short moment in time. Another fun event is the Cram Jam, where the No'iau Center will offer extended hours as students finish up final projects and study for exams. So you can receive help from tutors and even join a study session with a professor. So I would encourage you check with your professor to see if they will be hosting a study session event. And also, finally, take advantage of the student symposiums that provide opportunities to visit the UH West Oahu campus. Travis, what are some of the ways that you connected with professors and what impact did that have on your studies?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dr. Schwab. As you've probably noticed in this series, I'm a huge proponent of attending office hours. If I was to pinpoint one external factor that has contributed to my success at UH West Oahu the most, it would have to be office hours. That one-on-one time to get to know your professor, to bounce or brainstorm ideas, getting book recommendations, clarification on complex topics, learning how they approach research and andragogy, discussing career and educational goals. I mean, I can go on and on and on. But at the foundational level, making office hours a part of my routine has been so incredibly important and impactful. There have been so many great conversations that I wish didn't have to end during those meetings. So yeah, office hours, number one on my list of priority. Yeah, so Dr. Schwab, who else should students make an effort to foster a connection with?
Yeah, first I'd like to say I love that word andragogy. And for those who aren't familiar with andragogy, that is the study of adult learning. And you are an adult learner. You are a learner who has gone through the rigors of high school, of the community college, and you're now going into your undergraduate studies at the university. And so knowing what gives you the best opportunity as an adult to know yourself, to know what helps you succeed. But to your question, Travis, on who else should students make an effort to foster a connection with, I'd say meet with your professors, but also lean into your faculty advisors for registration assistance. And don't procrastinate in getting your course load figured out. I feel the most valuable resource you have is actually here on Kauai as well. So stay connected with your Kauai campus support, such as Anuhea and Rhonda and our educational specialists that are here particularly to resource you. And they're also here to help you navigate any aspects of being a student. They can help you overcome challenges in registration. They can even walk you through life circumstances, which may result, which we hope not, with a withdrawal or an incomplete, which no one wants, but hey, they'll be there to keep your eyes on the goal and help you map out a plan to reach that goal. No matter how that pathway may deviate, you're still going to be on track, so there's no reason to be discouraged. And finally, also begin meeting with your department chair to receive guidance in case you want to conduct your practicum here on Kauai. Travis, tell us a little bit about what's your take on being a successful education student. What is the philosophy and mindset that students could have to help them navigate this stage in their academic journey?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, Dr. Schwab. I have this approach that keeps me accountable on the day-to-day. I call it the 1% rule, and I'm sure other people have articulated this in a more detailed and expansive way, but essentially the goal is 1% better each and every day. This can apply to skills ranging from writing, research, professionalism, interpersonal communication, and so on. In the practical sense, this means going beyond the minimum required. The question always is, how do we quantify or measure this, right? How do we know if we've hit that goal of 1% better? And this will be different for everyone, and it is highly dependent on what you want to focus on improving. For me, I'm always thinking about how to improve my research and organizational skills. So I set goals for a set number of pages read per day outside of assigned classwork, and I journal whatever questions I may have and where I have found the answers, connections to other texts or ideas, and so on. Also tied to this is the concept that if you don't know something or if you're struggling, have the confidence to reach out for help. So Dr. Schwab, with all this talk of improvement, how can a student define success at this point in their academic journey?
Yeah, Travis, I really like the idea of 1%, and I kind of think of that 1% as a 1% and greater than 1%, because you're going to find times in your journey where you've actually have reached moments of great productivity. And there's going to be moments when that productivity might seem minimal, but the key word there is you're being productive. You're making moves in the right direction. And that's something to keep in mind. Some of the things that I would say define success at this moment in your journey is, ask yourself, do you know the department chair? When was the last time you spoke with a student support specialist or advisors? Should you be more and more aware of your course of study, knowing what classes that you're going to take next semester and beyond? What does that course look like, and what are some of the cool, interesting topics that you're going to be engaging with in the future? And also ask yourself, what new skills am I implementing within my study routines? It's so important to know what helps you progress and what your day-to-day life routines should be that will enhance your capacity to study, retain information so that you can perform at your highest capacity. And most importantly, be in tune with your own well-being. Build an increasing capacity to engage with confidence and face academic challenges that might be in front of you. Also, give yourself the needed time to reflect and adapt to the new possibilities that may emerge throughout your journey. Because, life isn't a straight line. There's going to be points in the journey where you're going to have to take in new information and define how you're going to adapt to continue your success. And quite often, these deviations create opportunities. So always be looking at the opportunities no matter what the deviation may be. Travis, you're a current student at UH West Oahu. We've hit on the philosophical components of becoming that ideal student. What is some of the practical advice you would give students at this point in time?
Yeah, I got some good ones for the listeners. Please, I beg you, save your notebooks, annotated PDFs, old essays, presentations, and so on. You literally never know when you might find that information to be valuable down the line. I can't tell you the number of times I've pulled an obscure concept or fact from a PDF that I read 2 or 3 semesters ago. Tied to this, your desktop needs to be organized. This means having a methodology behind the folder and file naming system that you develop. Lastly, star important emails in your inbox. There is much to be gained from having a paper trail, and this is especially the case in distance learning, as accountability is for all intents and purposes a prerequisite. And with that, I want to say aloha.
And we'll see you soon at our next series, Finding Your Groove.
Mahalo for listening to Transfer Talk. The views and opinions shared by the hosts and any guests are solely theirs and do not reflect the views and opinions of UH West Oahu or Kauai Community College as an institution. If you enjoyed listening to this episode of the podcast, please like, share, comment, and check out all the other episodes. Aloha.